Okay, well, thank you very much. My name is John Edeen. I'm the membership director for DRGO. I am a practicing pediatric orthopedic surgeon. And today I'm going to talk about trauma medicine in schools. Rob Morse put me up to this. I know Rob was here earlier. It looks like he's already gone home. There he is. Oh, there he is, back there in the back. Okay. So go to the next slide, please. So you're sitting, or you're standing at your sink washing the dishes after breakfast, and you get a notification on your phone that there's a shooting, there's an active shooter at your school, active killer. Okay? So what's your school's plan for this? Do they have a school resource officer? Do they have armed teachers and staff? Or is their solution to lock down and wait for the police to respond? Okay, so J. Eric Dietz, a professor at Purdue University, did a computer simulation study, and he looked at the casualties and response times if there's no armed people at the school versus a school resource officer versus 5% concealed carry teachers and faculty, 10%, and then with a school resource officer plus the concealed carry components. And what he found was that there was a decrease in the time for response and also the number of casualties, the more people that were able to defend with the appropriate type of force. Next slide, please. I was at TACCON last March, and Ed Monk gave a talk on his study. He's an Army officer, law enforcement officer, firearms instructor, and also was a high school teacher in two different school systems. And basically what he found out was that there was one person shot every 10 minutes looking at all these shootings. I can't even read my own slides, I'm sorry. And that if there was somebody at the scene, there were single-digit casualties, and if there was nobody at the scene, if there was no responder at the scene, you had to wait for the police to respond, you had double digits or worse. So time is of the essence. Next slide, please. So I contacted Joe Eaton of the FASTER program, and he also connected me up with Cameron McElroy, who's an EMT, and so they talked to me about their program. And FASTER stands for Faculty Administrator Safety Training and Emergency Response. And they teach safe firearms handling and marksmanship skills that exceed the state police standard. They also teach crisis management skills, and then they teach trauma first aid. Next slide, please. The trauma first aid is fashioned after the Tactical Combat Casualty Care course developed by United States Special Forces in the military. And the main focus is stopping the bleeding. That's the first thing, because if you don't stop the bleeding, nothing else matters. Then you have to open the airway, seal penetrating chest wounds, and then evacuate to a safe and more, to safety and advanced care. Next slide, please. So the types of preventable deaths that we're talking about are extremity hemorrhage, junctional hemorrhage, tension pneumothorax, and airway obstruction. Next slide. So massive extremity hemorrhage is controlled by using tourniquets for the most part. There are two types of approved tourniquets. One is called the CAT tourniquet, or the Combat Application Tourniquet, and the other one is the Soft T, which is Special Operation Forces Tourniquet. And these were both developed for military use. There's also a non-approved type of tourniquet. It's called a RATS tourniquet, and that's the one at the bottom there. And the reason I mention that, even though it's not approved, is in children, the other two types of tourniquets aren't always going to fit. And a RATS tourniquet will fit children and also animals, so that's a good thing to have if you have children and animals. And the third thing is some kind of improvised tourniquet, and the FASTER people actually recommend using a triangular bandage, the old cravats, and you can use that to make a tourniquet. Next slide, please. Also, junctional hemorrhage. Now, junctional hemorrhage basically involves the pelvis, the groin, the axilla or the armpit, and the neck. Those are places where you can't put a tourniquet, right? You can't put a tourniquet around your neck. That doesn't work very well. And so what they do is they talk about packing wounds. And there are there's a type of gauze called quick clot gauze, which actually has a chemical agent that stimulates blood clotting, and that's the recommended type of gauze. And what you have to do is pack the wound deeply and tightly, and then hold pressure on it for 3 minutes to get the bleeding to stop. Next. And then tension pneumothorax, and so really this results from a sucking chest wound, a penetrating injury to the chest. What we do is we treat that with a chest seal. So the air is entering the chest every time you breathe in. You put a chest seal, a vented chest seal. It acts as a one-way valve, and so when you exhale, the air comes back out, and you don't get a tension pneumothorax. If you have a tension pneumothorax that's not responding, you can use a large bore needle to basically decompress the chest as well. If you don't decompress these, the air fills one side of the chest and compresses the heart and causes circulatory collapse. Next slide. Airway obstruction. So if a person's talking to you, you don't need to put an airway in them. If they're conscious and responsive, you don't have to worry about it. For the people who are, have borderline consciousness or unconsciousness, the first thing you want to do is put them in a recovery position, which is on their side. You can also use maneuvers like a jaw thrust or a chin lift, and then you can also use nasopharyngeal airways, which are they're pictured up there, and they just slide in through the nose and go back behind the tongue, so it keeps the tongue from occluding the airway. And then there are other types of airways that you put in that sit right on top of the larynx. Laryngeal mask area and an eye gel. Now, the recommended is the eye gel because of air transport and things like that. The laryngeal mask actually has air in it, and so if you fly, that air expands, so that's why they recommend the eye gel. Next. So, does your school have a plan? Is the plan to call 911 and wait? Is there a school resource officer? Or are there armed and trained staff? Next slide. Do they have adequate supplies? These are commercially available. Also, Faster actually has pre-packed things as well, and you can go to their website and purchase your stuff there. Next slide. And most importantly, are people trained in the use of life-saving medical supplies? So you need to ask these questions of your school board, principals, and administrators. And I'm talking to you here, and I'm you in the general audience. Every school should have these supplies available, and not just a Band-Aid thing. A lot of, yeah, we have a first aid kit, and it's all Band-Aids and boo-boo stuff. I'm talking about life-saving supplies. And then we also need to have people trained in using them, and they have to be there. They can't be the guy that sits in the office somewhere and is nowhere near where the kids are. So anyway, thank you for your attention. And I'm going to just mention one other thing. DRGO has a program called 2adoc.com. And what that is a matching service for patients who want their Second Amendment rights respected and physicians who are willing to not ask the stupid questions that we all hate to hear, such as, do you own a gun and do you store it safely and all that kind of stuff. We are all responsible people. We know that. And so if you go to 2adoc.com, you can sign up, and it's a confidential service. We really need healthcare providers to sign up as well, especially primary care doctors, internists, family practitioners, pediatricians. It's a free service, and it's strictly confidential. It's non-searchable. So what we do is we will match you up and then send you a list of doctors. So we want you to go to 2adoc.com and sign up. And you can also access that at drgo.us. Thank you very much for your attention.